Biak. Thank you so much for joining.
I'm glad to be here.
We would just like to know a little bit about your background because everybody comes to the PhD, right, from different experiences and kind of what led you here and why you wanted to pursue your PhD.
I have a background kind of in everywhere. So I decided to spend the beginning of my 20s kind of exploring different fields, but generally within the public health space, because I knew I liked that a lot from undergrad. So my undergrad I was a pre-med. So there's some life sciences there, but I also fell in love with public health, data, and political science because I wanted to have a policy relevance to my work. I did a master's in health systems and services research, which is it's like a type of health policy. And I learned a lot about econ, psychology. I worked on mental health at the time. And then I entered the workforce and started applying some of those research skills in a nonprofit context. And then I went to a biotech company because I was interested in pandemics and learned a lot about management there, learned a lot about how to get things done to reach like a tangible outcome in the real world. But I realized that research was my passion. I spent some time in nonprofits doing policy research, biotech. I did some like political lobbying there. And I thought, okay, I have like a lay of the land of things that I'm interested in. Now it's time for me to go deep. And I think academia was like the place where I could gain a subject matter expertise and find my niche in the ecosystem so that I could become a leader in the field. So that's ultimately like my path. I also along the way realized that there was just a ceiling that I was going to reach, especially in public health, biotech, that space, the health space, without a terminal degree, because we have MDs in this space, we have PhDs in this space. So
Public health is so broad. What angle did you take, or what made the most sense for you?
yeah, public health is so broad, and that's my problem was I had such a hard time choosing a field. So I kind of went first from my background and like what skills I had, which was in policy. So I got into public health policy first as like a skill set. And then in public health, you divide it based on what cause you work on, and then also what skill you work on. So the different like examples of skills are like health policy, program evaluation, maybe epidemiology. It's different types of ways of tackling a public health problem. And initially, I started off with mental health and substance use disorders because I'm from Texas. The opioid epidemic is just really impacting the state. And so that's what I saw in the communities that I had experience working with. But then when I took a step back and thought, okay, why do I care about public health? I cared about scale, and I cared about that it was like an evidence-based scientific field. And so when I looked into different cause areas, I thought, wow, okay, there's potential for a pandemic that could completely, eradicate humanity. Like no one's preparing for it, and public health is all about prevention. This is like the thing I want to work on. Then I needed to like build more skills in epidemiology and in program evaluation, especially if we're doing something applied. And so then I kind of worked my way back from the cause area and decided, I want to be a policy person. I want to work on pandemics, but I also want to have a bunch of different skills to bolster my career.
Okay, yeah, I remember a lot of that work. So you asked a lot of good questions and you had ideas coming in, but you weren't right, you were, suspicious of your own ideas and you went through the data collection phase of this process, I think, really well. So that way you feel really confident about where you're going and the direction. Of course, you're going to evolve over the next 4 years, but at least at this point in time, you tell me, does it feel like you are going to be starting off on the right foot?
Yes, me figuring out what field of public health that I wanted to do was couched in the process of me looking into programs and seeing if I would actually be a competitive applicant for those programs. So I wanted to do all this modeling starting out, and I talked to people in the PhD programs through like our initial reaching out to programs, researching programs process. And I found out that I needed a lot of math and engineering to do some of that modeling. And I realized that wasn't going to be my strength and that I wanted to work with my strengths. That led me more towards, okay, I have statistics skills that might be more generalizable to epidemiology and policy. And so I went for more interdisciplinary schools that could teach me some epidemiology, but that I could get my foot in through the door with policy, and really focused on having a policy impact on the world. So yeah, really useful to talk to existing programs and look at the coursework and to see if this is like a reasonable next step for you in getting into the outcome that you want. Yeah.
That's smart. Yeah, I like that. And yeah, you did it very thoughtfully, and obviously you put in the time. Could you describe before working with us, before joining the program, kind of what the frustrations were that you were going through?
Am I allowed to talk about the program materials? I had a sense, okay, I've always wanted to be like to have my PhD experience, but I didn't really know, I didn't have concrete data behind whether this was like a reasonable fit for my career. The program really systematized the process of calculating an ROI of your PhD to make sure it's a rational decision for you, versus just like a thing that you want to do willy-nilly. And I really benefited from that. And then also looking into other people's careers, guiding myself through that process using the program. And then also like research generally as a field, I think is really isolating. And having the community, I wanted like a community structure for that. And also access to someone, a mentor that had time and resources to answer my question along the process instead of, I think a lot of the ways that mentorship happens is you have this like one-off call and then you can't ask all of your questions, and then it's just like not like you feel sorry for asking so many questions. And so I wanted that community and also the resource. So, and then the templates were so useful just to like get over the initial like, oh, I have to start somewhere. Period. And so having some structure to one, make sure that I was making rational, well thought out decisions, and having someone to look over my ideas, think through things with me, having a starting point for a lot of the action items so that I could just expedite that process and get over the anxiety or whatever might be stuck, like keeping me stuck in a process. And then three, the community, and then access to ongoing resources and extra eyes on everything that I did was really the thing that like saved me so much time.
You guys are all busy, and like you should be able to enjoy your life through this process. Like if you're spending 8 hours on each little part, that's just gonna, drag you down. And so the fact that that you were able to jumpstart a lot of things, I like that kind of thought process. We didn't do anything for you, but we jumpstarted a lot of it and
Yeah.
made, kind of clear the path a lot easier.
I don't have anyone in my family in the academic sphere. I have friends, but there's like certain norms that I felt like I wasn't calibrated to at the beginning. Like, how do I send an email? How do I talk in a way that's professional and respectful? Or how do I signal respect to someone while also positioning myself as a promising candidate. I learned in the program kind of by diffusion and like going through a bunch of email drafts, seeing other people's questions and how you respond to those. And so I think professionally, I developed a lot in that sense through the program as well.
What was like the bigger frustration for you before? Like what drove you to join? Like,
Like out of those three.
was it mostly feeling like you were going to be wasting a lot of time and that frustration of like,
Yeah. I know myself, like when I start something, and there's that, I don't want to waste a lot of time like scouring the web for things that I don't need to scour for, looking at like the most prime advice. And so saving myself time on the expert opinion that goes behind the structures that you've created in place in the project, in the program was really useful. And then yeah, using those as like a launching pad, being like, okay, Dr. Natalie gave me this like format. It's going to cover like most of my bases. I can rely on this instead of going through Reddit threads of like, how did I reach out to a professor? I think was just like so useful.
A lot of people bring up Reddit a lot, which is so interesting because it's like, yeah, it's a great resource, but I mean, you're just going to go down a lot of rabbit holes.
Exactly, like saving time on rabbit holes. And the more rabbit holes you go on, I think the more your anxiety just builds. And it leaves room for catastrophizing versus like just getting quick feedback from you, especially on like, the anxiety part, but just like having that sense of certainty, I think, or at least expert eyes on something, also helped, I think, with managing the stress and like the anxiety and the fear that comes with the process.
I think the quick feedback is a good call out because like, yeah, even with other mentors and things, because people have lives, right? You're sending, hey, can you help me? And they might get back to you 2 weeks later, which is fine, right? Because that's life. But like in those 2 weeks, you're kind of left in limbo. So what was like the point when you realized this process was working for you?
I think getting my resume completed was a huge milestone for me, because the like one theme that I learned in the program was to approach it kind of like finding your best fit for a program. Like I have value that I'm adding. The program has value that they're adding, and we're just collaborators. And so seeing it kind of like a market, and then being able to sell myself and plug in and fill in the gaps of, okay, what's my value add based on my previous experiences through the resume, I think was a huge like wow, like I have skills and I'm prepared moment. And then that getting my resume, I think not just for the PhD application process, but for like other areas of my career, just like accelerated the process of making connections, selling myself, getting kind of creating a personal brand for myself and like what I'm good at and what I have experience in. And then it just expedited the like entire rest of the program and talking to other people within the program and also outside of the program and just my personal professional networking.
I love
I use the same resume for everything, by
I
the way.
love like that's amazing. That's great. And like, yeah, you don't need to tailor your resume to like, to the nth degree. I think, yeah, to your point, once you figure out where your strengths are, where you're going, right? You do kind of tailor it. Obviously, academic versus industry is a little bit different. But even to your point, like when your industry is super a little more technical, a little more researchy based, there's a lot of overlap. And like I think you hit it too, because it does kind of start off those dominoes of like sending out
Mhm.
emails, connecting, and like it's interesting because like some people I think will, do it at the end, but it's like I think they've missed that opportunity to have a nice resume, sell
Mhm.
ahead of time, which is
Mhm.
nice. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Every week is different, but like what was a typical week like? Like how did because I think some people get like, oh my gosh, this is going to take my whole life. I'm going to lock myself away. And like, how did your normal week go while obviously managing your full-time role and doing the application process?
Yeah. I like my deal was well, because there's like a lot of open loops in the process. You're sending out an email, you're waiting for someone to get back to you. It was just to do a couple of action items every week.
Mhm.
And I quite like that the program, especially in the first couple of weeks, focused on a deliverable, like a resume or an essay. And so every day I would just say like I'll write one paragraph of like X essay or I'll send out X amount of emails or and in order to prepare for that like hard deliverable for that week or those couple of days, that's like the night before I would do the open-ended, like going on rabbit holes of like the research areas of that professor.
Mm.
And knowing that I had this like specific end goal of the resume or the program or the essay, like directed my rabbit holes to be more useful, pointed, saved me time, and it also made the process more like fun for me. That's kind of what like a yeah, breaking it down into maybe 3 or 4 chunks, and then spending like hard deliverable day progress on certain days, and then like some more exploring, prepping work on some of the other days.
I like that too. And also, I mean, you probably did it better than me because I tend to do everything at the same time, like all like 18 things open, and it gets overwhelming. But I like how you kind of gave yourself the day for like the open-ended confusing things like and then the next day you're like okay then I'll distill it or then I'll make use out of it versus trying to like make every second count like it counts but just not like always in that deliverable the background research and ideas are still going to come through so I think
Right.
that's interesting how you kind of like divided and conquered. What would you tell yourself a year ago like before you started the whole process?
On my birthday, I was like, I'm gonna try to apply for a PhD. I was like on a walk, and it felt so big and unorganized. I didn't know like when I would fit in GRE studying or how I would prioritize between everything. Breaking it down was really useful for me. So looking back, I did get into my dream program. I'm really like proud of myself for setting that goal and sticking to it and like taking the. I'm so excited. I really do feel ready for the PhD.
Our goal is getting you guys in, but our goal is to have you be really successful and enjoy the next step. The next step is doing the PhD, and I'm so excited that that you feel really prepared and like when you start a PhD, they'll just be like, "Oh, you have imposter syndrome," and they're gonna get all these things about like what imposter syndrome is. You'll at least be able to like see through the BS of it and know why I'm here. And like
The program really encouraged me to like point to evidence for your beliefs. And like if you have evidence for being a competent, prepared person for the PhD, imposter syndrome belief doesn't make sense. And so just building evidence through the essays, like reflecting over my experiences, has really helped a lot with like finding my sense of belonging as a woman, POC, all these like identities within academia.
you can definitely point to some real things. Like, I mean, you're just telling me you're going to be presenting your research in the Netherlands. Oh, would you recommend the Fearless Grad program to others? And if so, why?
Yeah, definitely would. So one, I think it'll save you a lot of time having a support system and feedback. that that you can trust is really important. One is the psychological support and feedback that reduces some of the uncertainty and fear in the process. And then two, like saving a lot of time and being able to lean on the resources was, I think, like a huge value add. It's like in the same way that you would make a purchase to make sure that it's like a cost-effective purchase for your time, your ROI that you're receiving. I think this program was just like very worth every single penny.
That's what we do. Because we do work on editing and writing and brainstorming. Like, how did that all go for you?
Yeah. I think everyone has like their distinct writing style, and mine's very long and rambly. And I like to write like a researcher where I have my points in ABC. And I think the best piece of feedback that I got on my writing was to tailor it to the specific like outcome that I was wanting. This is why I would like to do the program, tailoring it to reach like the outcome that I wanted to reach. There was significant like edits on my the application that got me into the school, and I also got compliments on the essay during my interview from like the initial draft, which was just like, I want to do this XYZ bullet point versus like defining a gap and the value exchange that could be accomplished through my time at the program.
So the networking part. So you said you talked to a lot of folks. Like, how did that process go for you? Was it hard to start, or like what surprised you through it, or like, or could you just talk a little about? Because I think that most people are worried, like, oh, no one's going to respond to me. Like, could you talk about your response rate?
It wasn't 100%. And like, no, I'm not going to use math to describe it.
Okay.
But I got the most out of a very few number of conversations, basically, is what I like realized. So my top 3 programs, I had very in-depth conversations with, and I actually felt pretty like relieved after those conversations went, because I knew that I just needed to get into one program. And so when I didn't, like, a lot of these researchers are really busy, and sometimes they'll say like, oh, I don't have time to talk to you about XYZ, or maybe don't show as much interest in like your personal resume and your story and your research interests. I felt fine after the first like 1 or 2 really in-depth conversations where we got into my my research ideas and who I was as a person. And I would also encourage other people to not like set the expectations such that you just need to get like the few big hitting interviews, calls, and acceptances.
That's a good point. Like, we're not trying to get 100 acceptance letters.
But it all goes down to perfect fit, right? Like you're not going to be the best perfect fit for every single program. And so getting like a really deep fit with a few schools, I thought was like the thing that got me to actually getting accepted into the program, because they only accept, 4 or 5 students. At least my program only accepted 4 students.
That's insane. Okay. I need to hear more. So where did you apply? Where did you get in? What did that look like?
Yeah, so I applied to 6 schools. I applied to Johns Hopkins, Brown, Harvard, Georgetown, Boston University Northeastern, and I got rejected from Brown. I haven't heard back from 4 schools, and I got into my top school. But I'm coasting. Like I'm basically done with the process. The rest of the, hearing back from the other programs, I think will just be like good fun and extra interview practice. And
you're going to Johns Hopkins, which is that was your top choice. That's amazing. It's a really small program, it sounds like. Or
yeah,
like,
every year they accept 1 to 5 people.
oh my God.
It's a really selective program, and I'm just really grateful that I got one of those spots this year.
Amazing. You're gonna kill it. And like, I'm just so excited for you. Okay, so what do you feel now? Like you're just coasting, you're ready to, like, you've got some time now. What are you doing between now and when you start?
Yeah, I'm actually doing more research, mainly just following like passion projects until I get to my biggest passion project, which is hopefully my thesis, my dissertation, and yeah, like other research areas that I've been interested in, and then taking a course, doing a research training program to expand some of my skills that I think will be very useful in answering some of the questions. And hopefully travel in there. So.
Yay, fun. That sounds really fun. That sounds great. I mean, like, anything else you want to share? I have a fun question. What was the most surprising part to this process? Either like technical, or like things you learned about yourself, or like about the process, or like anything surprising to you that was like, huh, didn't expect that.
Yeah, I think the amount of like the willingness of current students to help out and review my application materials to give me insights on the programs, who like which professors were taking new students, I think was really useful. So really like first targeting yeah, like people who will have a higher response, right, with your resume, and making those connections and leading. I think that really bolstered my essay writing. And then after the interviews, I didn't ask them for too much advice because I thought it wouldn't be fair. But
Oh, well, that's a good call out. Kind of like you're right. Like there's a whole ecosystem of people that you can tap into and like, ask questions and yeah, and you just never know. That was nice that you were like surprised at how willing they were to like respond and be kind, and that's awesome. Anything else you want to share with other folks going through starting this process? Anything?
I think the friendship aspect of the program is probably like the thing that hasn't stood out in the conversation yet. But and it was really great to see people with similar research areas. I connected with a lot of people in public health, and we had one-on-one calls, so I felt more assured in expanding my professional connection beyond just the PhD application process through this program.
Oh, I love them so much.
Yeah. And also like everyone is so supportive. I even did some co-working sessions with people for that bit of accountability. And had extra people look over my items, which was really great. So
Like we're just attracting good people. Like we're weirdos, but good. Like quirky, but in a good way. Awesome. Appreciate your time so much. Thank you.